The poster starts off by saying, The Legend of Zelda is his favorite series of all time, Ocarina being the favorite game. He owns every version, Ocarina of Time 3D, Master Quest, and Virtual Console, except the Nintendo 64 version. He owned the Nintendo 64 version at one point, but sold it when the GameCube version came out, thinking it was useless, but he was feeling nostalgic, so he decided to purchase a copy on eBay. He looked for the cheapest option on eBay, as do we all, and found two games that were cheap enough, a standard edition in decent condition, and a gold cart with the sticker that someone clearly did a poor job of tearing off. So he went with the gold cart because it looked cooler and it arrived in a week or so. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me. He had played the game countless times, so he knew where everything was and in what order to do things. So immediately after beating Jabu Jabu, he headed off into Hyrule Castle to get the Ocarina of Time and become an adult. Things happened normally. The setting became darker, the drawbridge opened, and I read this at a slower pace to keep myself going. Impa and Zelda came riding out of the castle. Zelda looked back and threw the ocarina into the river. Then things started to become stranger. The first thing he noticed was that Ganondorf didn't come riding out of the castle after Zelda. Zelda rode away, and everything just went along normally. He figured it was nothing, just some dust in the cartridge, and dove into the river after the ocarina. He came out with it held up in the air, and the screen read, "You found the Ocarina of Time." This instrument was sealed away by the royal family many years ago. It glows with an ominous light. I, changing to first-person perspective because I'm a boss, then went into the Temple of Time and played the first song, of Time, of course. And the spiritual stones all lined up and the door opened. But it didn't open at its normal speed. It was much slower, with the music slowed down to a demonic rate. Oh, those demonic rates. God always get you every time. I just thought it was a lag in a Nintendo 64 game, okay, and went and picked up the Master Sword. But the light that surrounded Link wasn't its normal blue color. It was a darkish black purple that surrounded him, and the screen cut to black. Then abruptly the game cut to a shot of Raru's face. First, Raru, which I hope I'm pronouncing that right, had deep black pools for eyes, no whites, no pupils. There was nothing but black. He said, "You don't understand what you've done. You've awoken the eight of us, spirits, I guess. You can't save yourself. He will kill you before the end." The grammar in this story is amazing. I decided to keep playing, going against every internal instinct I had. But I just had to know what he meant. So I did everything like I would normally do it, meaning the next step was to go for the Forest Temple. The temple went along normally, but the sprites for the four ghosts were slightly changed. It's hard to explain that they looked more human. They didn't have legs, but they had faces, horrible faces. When I walked into the temple, they looked at me for a solid minute before splitting four ways, just staring at me. Anyone who's played Ocarina of Time, I'm sorry, no disrespect, buddy, but you gotta work on this wordplay. And when you get to the Phantom Ganon, you have to walk in the room and then try to walk out. When I did this, the gate popped up, and Link turned around, and then instead of seeing Phantom Ganon, I saw Link. Only it wasn't like he was looking in a mirror. This Link was hanging from the ceiling, smiling, with those same horrible black eyes. The blue portal that appears after a boss fight was next to him, so I walked into it. Then Saria appeared, with those same black eyes and no mouth. She said only one thing: "Find 5 more, then he'll kill you." Then she laughed and gave me a medallion. I carried on going into the Fire Temple, and everything was normal, until I got to the boss room. I walked in and saw Darunia's mangled body in the center of the room with those eyes and a blue portal next to it. When I walked in, I went to where Darunia would normally give you the medallion, but he wasn't there. A text box popped up and said 4 more, then he'll kill you too. I gotta admit, it's kind of picking up. Next was the Water Temple. At the boss room, there was no boss again, but instead a room filled with dead Zoras, and Rudo standing next to a portal with black eyes, smiling. I walked in the portal and Rudo said he made me do it. Find 3 more, and you'll get to meet him. At the boss room of the Shadow Temple, I dropped down into the pit and onto the drum where you would fight Bongo Bongo. But when I hit the drum, I died, but the game over screen didn't come up. It just stayed on my dead body until I turned the game off. When I turned it back on, it was Impa's face with black eyes, and she said 2 more. When I got to the boss room of the Spirit Temple, it went through the cutscene of Katake and Kuami, if I'm pronouncing that right, sending Naburu as an iron knuckle after me. But they never said a word, and they had those horrible black eyes. When I was done fighting Naboro, the armor fell off and she fell to the ground dead, with a blue portal next to her, so I walked in it. She wasn't there to give me the medallion, but there was a text box that read, "Only one left, then you'll die." Next I went to the Temple of Time. Sheik came and transformed into Zelda. The light arrows fell from the sky, but she only said one thing: "He's coming." Then she disappeared. There was a scream, and the game cut to black. Then I was in the same place you meet the sages after you finish a temple, except there was someone new standing there. A person shrouded in black with a round white head, black hair, and giant black eyes. He said only one word: "Die." The game cut to black and there was a scream, and when it came back, it was Link's dead body in the center of the temple. No game over screen. I turned the game off, and when I turned it back, my save file was gone, and there was a new one called Run. I thought I saw a figure out of the corner of my eye, but I couldn't bring myself to look. So I did what anyone would do. I ran. I waited for a while and finally went back into my house, and when I came back, the console was still on, and "He will kill you before the end" was written on the cartridge in red. So I slapped a new sticker on the cartridge and sold it on eBay. It's still out there somewhere, but I have no idea where.